Hello, all. Today I'm going to be talking about Moon Saturn conjunction in astrology. This is considered a challenging yet potent aspect. And like all aspects in astrology, they're neither all good or all bad. They have higher modes of expression, especially when we're aware of them. We can really tap into the strengths. When we're unaware, however, sometimes the challenges of these aspects can predominate and create difficulty. So, Moon Saturn, it's an aspect I have in my own natal chart, and wow, it's one you definitely grow into, like any Saturn aspect. Saturn is time, it's that which is old. It's that which is restricted. It's considered a planet that excludes. So it's literally like whatever it's touching, it kind of like, whoa, it can deny that thing actually. So this is why it's not good or bad. It's just in astrology, auspicious or benefic has to do with does it allow or permit energy and include energy or expand energy, or is it like restricting and denying and separating? So Mars tends to sever, Saturn tends to exclude. So with the moon, the most vulnerable part of our whole chart, it has to do with the mind, according to Vedic astrology. In Western astrology, people associate a lot with our attachment style because in both systems, it's really about the mother, nurturance, how we receive love, how we give love. And so the sign that it's in can definitely shade this a little differently, but this aspect or this yoga is really important to understand if you have it because the love and receptivity nature can be blocked. And so I feel like with this aspect, anything that gets you more into your heart space and less into this kind of rigid thinking is very, very beneficial. So this connection of planets is actually called it's called a Shani Chandra Vish Yoga in Vedic astrology. And they're two of the most important celestial bodies in astrology because we have the fastest moving planet with the slowest moving planet, according to the Vedic system, right? We now know we have outer planets, but of the 7 primary planets, we have the quickest moving body and the slowest moving one. So, what it actually can gift people with is the ability to have an extremely disciplined mind and be very hardworking and very practical. The moon ultimately wants to receive. That's why the moon does so well when it is natally placed in water and earth signs. Um, Specifically, given that there's no challenging aspects to moon, challenging squares, other outer planet connections that can show a more complex picture. But essentially, with this aspect, we can really trace it back to very frequently because I see a lot of people with this aspect. It's really interesting when you're an astrologer, you tend to attract clients who have signatures you have. And I feel like that is such a blessing and a gift because then you can really speak from experience. And I start to notice patterns, right? When I have a few clients with the same exact aspect and I ask them questions and they can confirm that in this particular scenario, Moon Saturn can show that like when the person was like a baby being born, it could have been a difficult birth, like a C-section, and there could be some reason that the mother was unable to like give all the milk or nurturance to the child. And so it can also show like, a kind of cutting off of some nurturance early on. Maybe the mom worked really hard, maybe there was, yeah, like some birth circumstances, and we don't have to go so into the why of that, but it's just important if this is true in your case with this aspect to, as you get older, it's like almost nurturing that little child inside of you more and more because Moon Saturn natives tend to have been the little kids that grew up really fast, matured really quickly, the mind matured really quickly, In my particular case, I had much older, I have three much older siblings, so I was like a whole generation behind the rest of my family. So I essentially grew up in a household of all adults and all men, mostly men, except for my mom. So Saturn also represents father in Jyotish. So it's an interesting aspect. It definitely gives that discipline, that structure, that commanding leadership, and ability to really manifest material things, because the mind is, you could say, oriented on that which is practical more so than being in the feelings. But as a lot of these natives get older, it's all about learning how to receive affection and love, because when you kind of got skipped that step, or maybe were denied it as an infant or a child, then as you get older you realize in relationships you might not be as demonstrative as maybe some people are expecting when you enter into relationships with them. So we can use different tools, right, to step more into our feeling body, into our emotional nature, into receptivity. It's really common aspect I've found in people who've struggled with eating disorders or very restrictive diets, because again, the moon is like the stomach, it's where we receive nutrients and all that like juiciness, and Saturn there can want to deny things. And it can be so unconscious, right? Because the moon is such an unconscious innate part of ourself that we might have to like make an extra note to put in that self-care, to uh, book a massage for yourself, to cook a nice meal just for yourself, not do things out of duty, which is very much Saturn, which Saturn's like, I'm going to do this out of duty, but to do things because they simply feel good, and it feels nurturing to receive that energy or to share that energy as well. And so in relationships, this aspect can, like in my own personal experience, I've had people tell me, wow, you come off very cold, or you can come off very, I have other aspects to my moon, luckily, that soften it, but I have received the feedback of you come off like superior than other people, because Saturn has this like rigidity and this stature to it, right? It's all about structure. And so, and kind of an aloofness. So with Moon Saturn, you can kind of come off more aloof, more serious than you realize in a lot of cases. And so connecting with the inner child is huge. I also find Moon Saturn can be quite humorous, right? Because Saturn, it's more of that deadpan kind of humor that can get expressed. Of course, again, look at the sign you've got Moon in and Saturn in. And yeah, I've noticed like there can be this like, yeah, morbid or dry sense of humor with this aspect too. The moon being a very much like how our mind works. And yeah, it's just something else I've noticed with the aspect. But in terms of like being more affectionate, or allowing yourself to even receive more affection, that's something that can just come with like taking little steps. Learning about communication is huge too, like gaining great communication skills, because moon being so innate and it being just like hardwired into our psyche a little bit, we might not realize how we come off. And so it can be good to just like express that to people and work on it, right? Like receiving presents, I remember that was something I struggled with, to show like appreciation and affection. Yeah, it's something that I feel like, because anything with Saturn, as it ages, it kind of cultivates and develops like a fine wine. So I feel like those with this aspect cultivate these things over time, usually, right, through experience, and almost allow themselves to access their feeling nature, their inner child nature more over time. And again, you look at the whole chart, because we're multifaceted in the patterns we come in with. And I always tell people we are not our astrology chart. Our astrology chart is essentially the curriculum that our souls chose to incarnate with. Just as much as I didn't get to choose my hair color or where I was born, who I was born to, these impressions in our birth chart are patterns that kind of resonate within our being until we tune it. And certain ones need to be a little fine tuned. Like I think Moon Saturn is one. It's not horrible, right? Nothing in astrology is, people get, especially in Jyotish or Vedic astrology, people get very like, they can get very fatalistic or scared or fearful of certain things. But we learn the more like challenging placements so that we can bring harmony and balance. Saturn's a dry and cold planet, and the moon is this moist, and we can say Saturn's rigid, and the moon's this like moist, fluctuating planet. So in a sense, they balance each other. This is going to be a person that probably is really good at balancing the practical things with their emotional side, not letting emotions get swept up in them. In my case, I've got Moon Neptune. So the Moon Saturn actually is quite balancing to having Moon with Neptune, because I would without it probably have the propensity to get like way lost in the immaterial, way lost in the fantasy realms. So I feel like the Saturn helps me keep my mind planted on the ground, to an extent that if I didn't have that aspect, I wouldn't. So these are my ideas for Moon conjunct Saturn. Of course, you can do Moon mantras. You can strengthen Moon with things like Pearl. Not a gem expert, but there are ways that we can kind of tap into that more lunar side of us. And again, it can be just as simple as taking the time, like making it a rigid part of your life to self nurture, communicating more, expressing yourself and being more communicative and affectionate, like in small increments, because it might feel safer to do that as you build trust with whoever you're dealing with, and learn that, it's okay for your system to receive. It's okay to not live in scarcity. That can be another kind of programming with Moon Saturn, that there's not enough and I have to like hold on and conserve or limit how much I can give, when really there's way more than enough to go around. I always use this analogy. There's this spring I would collect spring water from in California, and it's just, the water's just coming out. Like we have infinite emotions we can tap into the field at any given time. It's just circulating, it's pouring. And people, they might want, oh, I just want to fill this one little bottle, not take up too much space if someone's waiting, and or seem too greedy. But the spring is just pouring out. So if you're not there to collect it, it's just going to spill out on the ground. So that's how I view our emotions too, that sharing our emotions doesn't mean that, no one's going to steal anything away from us because we shared our emotion. It can be safe to share and express our emotion. It helps us create boundaries. That's something that is almost too good with Moon conjunct Saturn. The boundaries might be too guarded, and it can become like any planetary aspect that we don't have awareness of. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like you have this boundary up and you're not expressing affection, and you wonder why no one wants to give you a hug. Whereas, people who might have a moon that is exalted and well aspected, it's more natural and innate for them to be in that nurturing energy and that overflow feeling. So restrictive things tend to be overdone here, and it's all about learning and becoming comfortable in your feelings, becoming permitting of yourself to receive and give, and slowly easing into that. So I hope this was helpful. If you guys found it interesting, please like the video or comments if you have this aspect, or have other questions. I do consulting one-on-one with clients, I help you not just understand your natal charts, but actually what cycle of life you're in. As good as I am with the psychological side of stuff, astrology is so practical. We're really understanding the timing of our lives. And so we can understand what phase we're in and better also know when we have windows of opportunities for things, when if we're going through a hard time, that's going to hopefully resolve. So there's a myriad of uses beyond the inner work. It very much connects to our external lived experiences here. So if you guys are curious about a session, please write to me. My website is below with all the information on how to book. Have a beautiful rest of your day.